It begins with a single phrase whispered through royal corridors: security is suspended effective immediately. And the shock isn't just that Princess Beatrice's protection is being blocked, it's who forces it. Princess Anne, normally silent, surgical, untouchable, allegedly orders royal advisors to shut down Beatrice's security detail, as if she's cutting a live wire. No public explanation. No family meeting. Just a command that turns royal protection into a weapon and makes Beatrice look suddenly exposed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It doesn't arrive with ceremony. It arrives with speed and urgent directive that travels through the palace like an electric shock, landing on advisors' desks with language so cold it feels final. Revised, paused, effective immediately. Words that sound administrative, but carry the weight of a verdict. Because royal security isn't a casual privilege that can be switched on and off like a light. It's a shield built from protocols, risk assessments, and deeply guarded routine. And yet, in this moment, that shield is allegedly being pulled away from Beatrice as if someone believes her protection itself has become dangerous, not just expensive, not just inconvenient dangerous. The unprecedented part is not the adjustment. The unprecedented part is the force behind it. Princess Anne is not known for public theatrics or emotional outbursts. She is known for discipline that never asks permission. When Anne moves, she doesn't float a suggestion, she enforces a boundary. So the idea that she would order royal advisors to block a security detail sends an unmistakable message to everyone inside the machine. This is not a debate, this is containment. Something has triggered her no exceptions instinct. The same instinct that has kept the monarchy steady through decades of storms. And if Anne is willing to make Beatrice look suddenly exposed, it means she believes the alternative is worse. For Beatrice, the impact is immediate and deeply personal, because vulnerability isn't a theory, it's a feeling that settles in the chest like ice. One day you move with the quiet confidence of protection, the next you're aware of every gap, every unknown, every moment where help might not arrive fast enough. The emotional whiplash is brutal, from royal certainty to a kind of isolation that doesn't need to be announced to be understood. And in a family where status is often expressed through access, the removal of security isn't just about safety. It's a signal, it's a downgrade, it's a message delivered without words. You are not being treated as untouchable anymore. Inside the palace, confusion spreads faster than facts. Aides scramble, not just to understand what happened, but to understand who authorized it, because in royal life, who said so is the difference between policy and punishment. Staff members quietly compare notes, looking for the missing link in the chain, the person who signed off, the door where the decision was made. Some whisper that it came from a risk review. Others insist it's a power move. But everyone agrees on one thing: this doesn't feel like routine. It feels like a sudden clamp tightening around a single individual. And when the clamp tightens, it usually means someone believes the problem is escalating behind the scenes. Anne's reputation makes the situation even darker, because she has never been sentimental about comfort when she believes duty is on the line. She has enforced hard boundaries before without apologies, without softness, without leaving room for negotiation. That's why the advisors don't publicly resist. That's why the palace doesn't immediately correct the narrative. They know Anne doesn't make moves like this for optics. She makes them for stability. And if she's forcing a change that makes Beatrice look unprotected, it suggests she's looking at Beatrice through a lens the public isn't allowed to see, a lens of risk, exposure, and containment. And then the foreshadowing grows sharper, because someone inside the royal machine lets a single phrase slip quietly, almost carefully, as if testing whether it will survive the corridor before being swallowed. This isn't about money, it's about risk. That one idea changes the meaning of everything, because if the security issue is framed as a risk, then the question becomes terrifyingly specific. Risk from whom, risk of what, and risk to whom? Risk to Beatrice, or risk caused by Beatrice? And if Anne is treating protection like a live wire, It implies the danger isn't outside the palace at all, it's tangled inside it, where reputations are fragile and secrets are treated like currency. And as shock ripples outward, the bigger question emerges: why would Anne treat Beatrice's security like a threat that must be contained? The public thinks royal security is permanent, an invisible shield that never breaks. But behind palace walls, protection is managed like a living system, upgraded, downgraded, reassigned, and quietly restructured with paperwork the public never sees. That's why Anne's alleged order is so chilling. Because if advisors can be forced to block a security detail, it means the royal machine has a lever, one that can isolate a royal without ever saying the word punishment. Behind the pageantry, there's a hidden rulebook most people will never even imagine exists. There's official protection, the kind wrapped in ceremony and state language. And then there are discretionary arrangements, private layers that can be adjusted without a headline, without a statement, without the public ever realizing the shield has thinned. That distinction matters, because it's where power hides. Advisors don't stand in front of cameras, they stand in front of decisions. They translate concern into recommendation, recommendation into policy, and policy into reality. And when a senior figure like Anne allegedly applies pressure, the process doesn't look like an order, it looks like procedure, which makes it far more dangerous and far harder to challenge. Quiet methods start doing loud damage. Personnel are reassigned under the polite cover of availability. A budget review suddenly appears, timed so perfectly it doesn't feel like finance, it feels like discipline. Risk assessments are requested, then circulated, then treated as if they were inevitable truth rather than crafted framing. And the most chilling part is how clean it can all be. No one has to say, "We're isolating you." They simply reshape the system until isolation becomes the result. That's why security changes can signal status in royal life like nothing else. They control access, movement, freedom, and even how seriously the institution treats you. The crown doesn't always punish with words. Sometimes it punishes by quietly removing what used to protect you. And Beatrice has always lived in the most dangerous space of all, royal enough to attract attention, but not central enough to be protected without question. That fragile balance is exactly what makes this moment explode, because the whispers say she didn't lose security due to routine adjustments. She lost it because she became complicated. That single word lands like a coded warning inside the palace. Complicated isn't about personality, it's about risk, association, exposure. It's what people say when they can't say the real reason out loud. When someone labels a royal complicated, they're not describing the person, they're describing the threat they believe follows them. The emotional impact is brutal in a way outsiders rarely understand. A quiet downgrade doesn't just reduce safety, it rewires identity. Betrayal arrives first, because if your own institution can thin your protection, it means you are no longer fully held by it. Humiliation follows, because everyone inside the machine notices the change even if no one dares mention it. Then fear settles in, steady and heavy, because vulnerability isn't abstract when your name is known and your face is recognizable. Suddenly the world feels closer, louder, less predictable. And that's where sympathy and suspicion collide. Beatrice becomes the figure people pity, and the figure people watch. Insiders claim this wasn't a review at all. It was a targeted intervention designed to pressure, to steer, to force compliance without admitting that compliance is what's being demanded. And that's where the foreshadowing turns sharp, because the whispers suggest Beatrice resisted an instruction that would have kept her safe but controlled. Safe but confined, protected but supervised. The kind of offer that isn't really protection, it's a leash wrapped in velvet. The deeper tension becomes painfully human, Beatrice caught between loyalty to family and loyalty to her own life, between staying inside the approved lanes and choosing a path that might expose her to both danger and blame. Then the timeline tightens, and the rumor becomes a blade. People say Beatrice's security was blocked right after a private warning she didn't follow. That's the cliffhanger that changes everything. because it implies this wasn't random and it wasn't gradual, it was reactive. As if someone heard something, saw something, documented something, and decided the lever had to be pulled immediately. And now the palace is left balancing two terrifying possibilities. Either Beatrice is being punished under the disguise of procedure, or someone truly believes Beatrice is connected to an unacceptable exposure the crown cannot afford to absorb. But if the system allows silent changes, then the real story isn't the mechanism, it's the motive, and what Anne believed she was preventing. And when you follow the timeline, one detail keeps surfacing: this didn't happen gradually. It happened right after a private dispute reached the advisor's ears. Princess Anne doesn't act for gossip. She acts when something crosses a line she believes protects the crown. That's why insiders describe a private dispute sharp, personal and humiliating that allegedly sparked her order to advisors. Not a scandal in public, a crisis in private. The kind of conflict where loyalty is measured, boundaries are enforced, and one royal realizes too late that the family can punish you without ever raising its voice. The dispute, as it's whispered, wasn't loud enough for the public to hear, but it was brutal enough for the palace to feel. Anne's red line mentality doesn't leave room for ambiguity. She moves when she believes the crown is being endangered, not when it's merely embarrassed. And that's why the tension reportedly centered on one uncomfortable question. Who was Beatrice meeting? Who was she trusting? And who was she bringing close enough to become a liability? In a family where proximity is power and access is everything, the wrong association doesn't just create gossip, it creates risk. And Anne, according to insiders, treated the situation like a breach, not a misunderstanding. What makes it intimate is the emotional whiplash. Beatrice isn't portrayed as reckless, she's portrayed as cornered. The alleged clash isn't just about rules, it's about control. Beatrice, already living in that fragile space of being royal but not untouchable, reportedly felt the walls closing in, instructions delivered like guidance, boundaries framed as protection, and yet every line drawn around her felt less like safety and more like supervision. That's where the humiliation comes from, the moment you realize your own family doesn't trust you to manage your life, but still expects you to carry the crown's reputation like a silent burden. And then, the argument doesn't stay a family argument. It becomes a governance issue. That's the part that changes everything. Because the second advisors are pulled in, the dispute becomes institutional. Not are you okay, but are you a risk? Not what happened, but what do we do now? The advisors don't handle emotions, they handle liability. Once they're involved, the palace machine starts turning the way it always does, calmly, efficiently, and without mercy. Anne's cold logic allegedly guides the next step: security can be withdrawn to force compliance. Not as revenge, not as spectacle, but as pressure. A quiet consequence that can't be argued with in public, because it was never announced in public. In royal life, nothing moves without a file. A briefing, a risk note, a quietly circulated dossier that turns emotion into policy. And the rumor is that such a dossier landed on the advisors' desks, one that framed Beatrice's security as not just expensive but dangerous. The kind of report that doesn't say we're worried. It says, if you don't act, you're responsible. And once that paper exists, Anne can demand action. This is where fear takes over the room. Because once a risk is documented, inaction becomes liability, and liability is the one thing advisors are trained to avoid. The alleged dossier reclassifies Beatrice's situation as exposure, a chilling word in palace language, because it implies the danger isn't theoretical, it's active. It also creates a perfect weapon. Safety becomes the justification for obedience. If Beatrice resists, she can be framed as irresponsible. If anyone defends her, they can be framed as negligent, and quietly, the machine shifts into a posture where the most human parts of the story, fear, betrayal, dignity, are treated like obstacles to be managed. Even the family dynamics reportedly bend under the weight of that document. Whispers tease tension higher up: who supported the crackdown, who hesitated, who stayed silent. who looked away and let Anne carry the knife because it kept their hands clean. And inside that tightening circle, Beatrice begins to feel the most painful realization of all. She's being treated less like a person to protect and more like a problem to contain. Her safety becomes conditional. Her protection becomes negotiable. Her relationships become evidence. Then comes the darkest cliffhanger, because the rumor is the dossier referenced someone Beatrice refused to cut off. Not a vague concern, but a specific connection that made the advisors feel they had no choice. And suddenly the question stops being, why would Anne do this? And becomes, what did they believe Beatrice was carrying into the royal orbit that terrified them enough to pull her protection away? But if Anne forced advisors into action, then someone had to supply the justification, and that justification may be darker than anyone wants to admit. And that's when Beatrice's world tightens, because security isn't just protection, it's status, access, and control over who gets near you. Take away a royal's security and you don't just remove guards, you remove freedom. You shrink their world. You decide where they can go, who can approach them, and how visible they can be without fear. That's why this alleged move feels like something more sinister than a review. It feels like isolation by design, Anne using the palace's most silent weapon to force Beatrice into line, while making it look like procedure. What happens next isn't loud, but it's suffocating. Because the moment protection is thinned, every ordinary choice becomes a calculation. Where can she go without drawing attention? Who can she trust to be close without becoming a liability? How does she move through life when the palace has quietly signaled that she is no longer fully held by the institution? Security isn't only about physical safety, it's access, movement, privacy, and vulnerability, all controlled by a system that can pretend it's neutral, while it quietly decides who is comfortable and who is exposed. And that's the real cruelty of it. The squeeze doesn't need to be announced, because the person living it feels it in every hour. Fear replaces confidence overnight. The sense of certainty that once wrapped around her like an invisible layer is suddenly gone, and in its place is a heightened awareness that feels like constant pressure on the ribs. Even inside the family orbit, the atmosphere changes. Staff reactions split in a way that reveals the palace's hidden loyalties. A few protect Beatrice, quietly small acts of support, subtle check-ins, discreet warnings, while others avoid her like she's contagious, as if proximity might pull them into the blast zone. The corridors become colder, the smiles more cautious, the conversations shorter, not because they hate her, but because they fear being seen as aligned with her. In royal life, alignment can be punished without explanation, and Anne's calculation, as the whispers frame it, is brutally simple. If Beatrice feels exposed, she becomes easier to steer. Pressure creates compliance. Vulnerability creates obedience. When your safety feels conditional, you start choosing the path that restores the condition even if it costs your pride. That's why isolation by design is such an effective tool. It doesn't need threats. It doesn't need shouting. It simply tightens the environment until the target reaches for the nearest exit, and the palace decides where that exit leads. But here's where the story turns sharper. Because the same pressure that breaks one person can ignite another. According to whispers, Beatrice didn't accept the downgrade quietly. She made calls strategic, desperate, and dangerous. The kind of calls that can bypass the palace machine and create allies where the advisors can't control them. And that's when the mood reportedly flips from discipline to panic. Because a royal without security is vulnerable. But a royal who starts calling outside the system is something else entirely. Unpredictable. And unpredictability is the one thing the crown fears most. Her alleged outreach isn't framed as gossip, it's framed as survival. Contacting figures who could expose the internal decision-making, people who understand how the palace actually works when the curtains are closed. This is where the emotional beat hits hardest. Fear doesn't disappear, it transforms. Humiliation hardens into defiance. Anxiety becomes resolve. Instead of shrinking, she reportedly begins to push back, not with public speeches, but with the most dangerous act a controlled institution can face, seeking options beyond its reach. And the palace knows what that means. Once a royal finds outside leverage, the system loses its monopoly on the narrative. The scramble begins immediately. Advisors try to contain the story before it leaks, because the real nightmare isn't just bad press, it's exposure of the machinery itself. Who recommended what? Who signed off? Who pressured the change? Who used safety as a cover for control? And Anne, according to the same whispers, doubles down. She won't be challenged by emotion. She won't let defiance rewrite her authority. Because to Anne, the crown's stability is not negotiable, and anyone who threatens it directly or indirectly must be contained. Foreshadowing creeps in through a darker rumour, a private message from Beatrice that crossed a boundary. A line too direct, too revealing, too fearless. Something that made the palace realise this wasn't just a frightened royal, it was a royal willing to speak. And the cliffhanger becomes terrifying. Beatrice allegedly threatened to reveal why she was targeted in the first place. Not just what happened, but the real reason, names, motives, the kind of truth that makes institutions choose force over compromise. But when pressure rises, people break or they fight back. And Beatrice's next move reportedly terrifies the palace. And once the threat of exposure enters the room, the palace reaches for its final weapon, a definitive decision that can't be argued with. The monarchy doesn't survive on warmth, it survives on control. And the final outcome of this alleged clash isn't just about Beatrice's security. It's about who decides what royal truly means. When Anne forces the advisor's hand, she isn't only blocking protection, she's setting a precedent. Obedience earns safety, defiance earns exposure. It's chilling, because it reframes family as a system, and Beatrice as a warning sign. The final lock doesn't arrive with a press release. It arrives like a sealed verdict, delivered through procedure so clean it feels untouchable. One day, Beatrice's security is under review. The next, it's permanently restricted, quietly restructured into something thinner, conditional, and painfully symbolic. Not fully removed, because that would look cruel, but reshaped in a way that communicates the real message. You will not be protected on your terms. You will be protected on the palace's terms, and those terms can tighten the moment you step outside the lines. In that outcome, Anne's moral stance is carved into stone. She frames it as duty, not cruelty. The crown must be protected. The institution must be safeguarded. And if an individual becomes complicated, the institution doesn't comfort, it corrects. For Beatrice, the loss is more than logistical. It is a psychological fracture. Vulnerability becomes a permanent companion. Humiliation becomes a quiet stain she can't scrub away, because everyone inside the palace understands what a security downgrade really means. It's not just about safety, it's status, it's access. It's the difference between being treated as a core asset and being treated as a manageable risk. And there's a particular kind of suffering that comes from realizing you are not untouchable, not even in your own family, especially in your own family. The contrast is brutal. A life shaped by privilege, suddenly shadowed by conditional protection, where the smallest defiance can cost you the only shield that made you feel secure. The aftermath, as insiders whisper, is even colder because the responsibility dissolves into silence. There are hints of William/Charles tension. Not because anyone publicly fights, but because the palace doesn't need a shouting match to expose a divide. Who quietly approved? Who hesitated but didn't intervene? Who avoided responsibility by pretending it was advisors' territory? Who looked away and let Anne take the heat because it kept their hands clean and their image intact? In the monarchy, approval doesn't always look like support. Sometimes it looks like absence. And in that absence, Anne becomes the face of the decision, while others remain safely blurred in the background. Beatrice's internal conflict becomes the real climax, because she is forced into a choice no royal wants to make: stay loyal or protect herself, stay quiet and keep what's left of her safety, or fight and risk losing everything that still connects her to the institution. Her fear doesn't vanish, it sharpens. Her trust doesn't disappear, it transforms. She becomes wary, guarded, less willing to surrender her life to people who can downgrade her with a memo. And this is where the story turns from punishment into danger, because the palace can control security, but it can't control what betrayal does to someone's mind. Palace victories are never clean. After Anne's alleged crackdown, something begins to move under the surface: the Whisper Network. Staff exchanging fragments, insiders hinting that the security block was a cover for something far bigger. And Beatrice, once quiet, once manageable, becomes the royal everyone watches, because she's carrying a wound that can either heal into silence or open into confession. The diaries of the future aren't written in ink, they're written in revenge. The palace's new fear isn't Beatrice's safety, it's Beatrice's voice. Staff anxiety spikes because everyone senses what comes next: questions, blame, a hunt for who leaked what, who knows what, who will be sacrificed if the story breaks outside the gates. Anne's long game continues stability over sentiment, regardless of fallout, because she believes she prevented something catastrophic. But the very act of preventing it creates its own threat. People start to suspect evidence exists: messages, reports, a witness who heard the wrong conversation at the wrong time, a document that framed Beatrice as an exposure rather than a family member. And once evidence exists, the palace doesn't just fear scandal, it fears proof. That's the final twist tease that makes the entire outcome feel darker than discipline. Because the Whispers insist the real reason for the block wasn't Beatrice's behavior, it was what she knew. If that's true, then the security decision wasn't protection at all. It was containment. It was the Crown deciding that the safest version of Beatrice is the version that feels isolated, pressured, and too afraid to speak. But fear doesn't always produce silence. Sometimes it produces confession. Because even if the palace wins today, the real danger remains once a royal feels betrayed. They stop protecting the crown and start protecting the truth. And as the doors close and the palace pretends this never happened, one question refuses to disappear: what did Beatrice know that made her protection expendable? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.